MLA Works Cited Part 3. So, I'm really not kidding about following the examples in the handbook as exactly as possible. I know it may seem onerous to make sure you get all of the formatting right, like what goes in italics, or to get all the periods and commas in the same place as they are in the example. But all of those elements communicate specific information to someone who understands how to read MLA citation style. It's like periods and capital letters in regular sentences. They tell us where one thought or idea ends and the next one begins. So in MLA, whether you put a title in italics or quote marks, for example, tells the reader something specific about what type of source it is. Italics indicate that a title represents a bigger, standalone work, often the type that is made up of smaller components, and examples include books, journals, films, albums, and websites. In contrast, putting quote marks around the title tells readers that it is one of those smaller components. It can stand on its own, but it is most likely to be published or produced as part of a larger project. Examples include chapters, poems, or essays in a book, articles in a journal, scenes of a film or episodes of a TV series, songs on an album, and individual pages on a website. In the past, titles that are now italicized used to be underlined. This is a holdover from the era of the printing press, when the publisher turned a handwritten manuscript into a printed document. Since individuals can't handwrite in italics, authors would underline words in their manuscript that should be italicized in the final published print version. Since access to computers is so ubiquitous these days, it no longer makes sense for the author to underline something just to indicate it should be made in italics when he or she can simply make it italics from the beginning. As such, the 7th edition of the MLA went to using italics only, so nothing is underlined anymore. In addition to paying attention to formatting rules for individual works cited entries, the works cited list as a whole has some important formatting rules. First, always title the works cited list with the words works cited centered above the list. Other than centering it, do not use any other specific formatting. In other words, don't make it bold or underline it, and don't change the size or font of the text. Second, the individual entries on the works cited list should be arranged in alphabetical order, based on the first word in the citation. Most of the time, that will be the author's last name, but not always. Some citations start with a title. In those cases, use that to alphabetize the entry within the larger list. Keep in mind, too, that standard alphabetization rules ask you to alphabetize numbers as though they are spelled out, even when they are written as a number, and that you should not alphabetize by articles, which are the words the, a, or an. If something starts with one of these words, leave the, a, or an in place, but list the entry in alphabetical order based on the next word in the title. So if the title was The Incredible Life of Mr. Smith, you would alphabetize it under I for incredible rather than T for the. Third, the spacing of the works cited page should be consistent with the rest of the document. So if the document is double-spaced, as most formal papers are, then the works cited list should be double-spaced. So, if the document is double-spaced, as most formal papers are, then the works cited list should also be double-spaced, and there should be no extra spaces between entries in the works cited list. If the document is single-spaced, then so too should the works cited list. Fourth, all entries in the works cited list should use a hanging indent, which is sometimes called reverse indenting. This is when the second, third, fourth, and so on lines of the citation are indented, but the first line stays all the way to the left margin of the page. Visually, this is the opposite of a traditional paragraph where the first line is indented and every other line is aligned with the left margin. A hanging indent can be easily achieved by manipulating the markers on the ruler at the top of your word window. Generally, you see something that looks like this on the left margin of the ruler. The gray area shows what's outside of the left margin, while the white area indicates what is inside the page's margins. The top triangle, the one pointing down, represents the first line of typing in a paragraph. The bottom triangle, or the one pointing up, represents all lines after the first line. To move either, click and drag it as desired. All indenting, regular or hanging, should be to a 1/2 inch measurement. To achieve a hanging indent, highlight the works cited entries and change your ruler so that it looks like this. Be precise in clicking on the bottom triangle to drag it. If you click on the rectangle below the bottom triangle, you will move both triangles, but keep them in their respective position to one another.